with political analysts. I'm going to get more reaction from them as well. In fact, Jesse Duarte, Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, saying that in most of the ANC strongholds, they are really disappointed with that turnout, and it's a signal that people are not happy with service delivery in some of those areas, especially those areas that they have not particularly done so well. So I'm still sitting with my political analyst, Ongama Mtimka, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and look at some of the numbers. I also would like to welcome Dr. Jeffrey Baloyi from the CSIR, and we're going to look at some of the predictions they have done. And I'd like to take this opportunity now to welcome our SABC 1 viewers. You are watching SABC News on Channel 404, of course, rolling coverage of the elections, and we are now on results mode. We are looking at those numbers. The numbers are still being processed by the IEC. I think we're sitting at 96.9%. But Ongama, let me perhaps quickly bring you in here. Interesting observations that you've had from what the ANC is saying, of course, saying that they are disappointed, with the voter turnout. And also, I found that the tonality from the ruling party is somehow more subdued than the other political parties who've been saying that they will definitely not go into coalitions with certain parties. But the ANC saying, they are willing to partner with some political parties, barring obviously one or two of their policies that they're holding very dear. What's your observations?
I think we're seeing some significant changes. First of all, it's important how political parties respond to electoral performance is very important, especially in our continent, where you find that there's a likelihood in elections, especially as elections become a lot more hotly contested, that people will reject the outcomes and want to challenge it, and it leads to a whole lot of problems. So I like the fact that the parties that have spoken reaffirm the role of the Electoral Commission. We know that some of them didn't want the election to proceed because of COVID-19, but they are accepting the outcome. They participated, they are accepting the outcome. I think that's really great for our democracy. As opposed to their attitude and tone towards coalitions. It's quite an interesting one. The ANC is speaking as a suitor here and also as a party that is ready to be approached. It's quite interesting. It's not in a combative stance. They cannot afford to be, because they know that they are the elephant in the room. They are the ones that political parties have been seeking to topple. But their rhetoric here was quite interesting. It's an invitation to other political parties without actually saying and appearing desperate. And in fact, if Fikile Mbalula didn't come at the end, the message would have been one of, you've hit us, you've given us some tongue lashing, but let's move over that. Come, let's talk about coalitions. Obviously, he was slightly on the combative, but I think the general message is one of preparedness to work in a coalition environment. And I think I like what Paul Mashatile had to say as well, that we've got to accept that this is a reality, that South Africans are not keen anymore to accept party dominance as a way to govern this country. They have had 27 years of the dominant party system, and now it seems like it's going to morph into either multi-party, as we are seeing an exciting performance by some of the small parties, or it will crystallize into a two-party system, but that's going to take a period of about 8 years before it crystallizes.
Okay, I'm going to go to the board very quickly a little bit later on, but an interesting observation too, as the numbers are coming in, as those numbers are being captured and tallied, more hung councils and municipalities in this election than ever before. We're currently sitting at 43, and I'm going to bring in Dr. Baloyi now from the CSIR. I want us to look at 3 municipalities, in fact, but Metsimahole in the Free State, and also look at Gauteng, Emfuleni, as well as Midvaal. But perhaps let's look at the national picture. I've got that national picture on the board there now, with the 96.6%, I think, of the votes that have already been captured by the IEC. Talk to us about the national picture at the moment, how it looks like, and then we'll quickly go into those 3 municipalities that I've spoken about. But firstly, give us just a national picture in terms of the predictions that you have.
Okay. In terms of the predictions, maybe just to correct, in terms of the votes that have been captured, is 96%, as you say, but they've verified about, I think, 78%.
Yes.
Thereabout.
Yes.
But with our model, once you go above 10%, we trust what the model actually tells us. So in terms of the national picture, the ANC, we project that it actually will drop to 46% by the time they are done capturing all the votes. So if you compare it to 2016, in 2016 they had 54.5%. And then if you look at the DA, in 2016 they had about 27%, and we project that by the time everything has been captured, they will have dropped down to about 22%. But obviously within a 2% margin of error. So, but then if you look at the biggest gainers, one would have expected maybe the established parties to have gained more. But if you look at the EFF, they moved from 8.2% in 2016 to around 10.5%, which is not a big gain as you would have expected. But then if you look at maybe FF Plus, they moved from 0.8% in 2016 to about 2.4%. That's what we project that we will get.
And the reason, very quickly, that you don't necessarily look at the smaller parties as well as the new parties, because we know in Gauteng, as an example, the Action SA actually coming out there strongly in terms of Johannesburg.
Actually, for Action SA, we have captured it.
Oh, fantastic.
We project that they will capture about 2.4% of the votes by the time everything has been tallied up nationally. Then if you want to go to municipalities where they've done very well, like City of Johannesburg, City of Tshwane, Ekurhuleni, they've done very well. I can go to those numbers if you want. Then I can show you what they've actually done. They've performed what we expect them to have performed. In the City of Johannesburg, we expect them to actually capture about 15.6% by the time everything has been tallied up.
And in fact,
Action SA.
Yeah, and in fact, Action SA's Herman Mashaba was here reiterating that he will not go into a collision with, the ANC. Earlier, we know that he also had the same sentiments with the EFF. We heard from the ANC not too long ago saying that they will go with parties that they feel are strong and that they feel are not too weak. What do you make of Action SA's performance?
It's fantastic. In fact, if you look at throughout the country, you find that independent candidates and what you've categorized as other, it's civic organizations, groups that emerge from communities have done significantly well. So we are within a broader context of declining party dominance and therefore a fluid electoral system, which actually makes voters be a lot more susceptible and open to vote for other parties. So the success of Action SA is showing that there are opportunities on the left of the DA, but on the right of the ANC, as much as they are on the left of the ANC.
All right. Let's pause our conversation now in studio, and let's now bring in a voting rights organization of South Africa who are observers in these elections. We are now joined via Zoom by its president, Jeffrey Ngonyama. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Ngonyama. Talk to me about just some of the work that you have been doing during these elections, and what have you observed?
Thank you for having us. Well, we observed in 5 provinces in the country, namely Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Northwest, Limpopo, and the Free State. Well, this election was difficult for everyone, I think for voters as well, the IEC and political parties, COVID being a factor in this case. But before I respond to your question, maybe if you can allow me, I would like to respond to what I've heard from the IEC, where they said they had 42 days to prepare for the elections. For us, this is a narrative that South Africans should not accept, because the IEC would know, or they knew, that 2021 we're going to have local government elections. And it cannot be correct for them to say that they had 42 days. And I don't know how they're calculating the 42 days. I'm assuming they're calculating it from the time when the court actually dismissed their application, when they attempted to have the elections postponed. So that narrative cannot be accepted. They should have prepared the elections properly. And maybe I should also say that before they asked the retired judge to investigate the feasibility of having free and fair elections, they are the ones that actually told South Africa that they were ready. And they insisted actually at that time to have the elections held on the 27th of October, until there were some complaints from few political parties when they changed their mind and then involved Musineki, who then issued that report that South Africans know about. So the point I'm making there is, yes, this has been a difficult election for them, for everybody, including the IEC, but I don't think South African voters should accept that they had 42 days to prepare for the elections. Indeed, there's no perfect election. This is our view. Even first world countries are battling to have a perfect election. So indeed, this one was not a perfect election. And I don't think it's easy to actually get a perfect election. And I'm saying this because some of the challenges and the glitches that we observed are not new. But in our view, they are not that material to an extent that one would come to a conclusion to say these elections were not free and fair. And I'm saying this because when we look at everything in totality, for instance, things like transparency of the process, whether there was free campaigning in general, except few minor incidences here and there, the privacy of the voting, and even the integrity in terms of the eligible people that were allowed to vote, our view is that South Africans should be urged to actually accept that these elections were free and fair. In the light of what I've just said, to say there isn't a perfect election. But there are challenges that we thought the IEC should have dealt with better. For instance, we realized that there was inadequate training. And I want to make this very clear, because we're not saying there wasn't training, but we pick up that there were examples in terms of the behavior and the way the IEC staff members, the way they're actually conducting themselves, it talked to inadequate training. Just to give an example, for instance, during counting, we battled that we realized that they were battling to reconcile numbers. And the question that came to mind was, do they really check the skills of the people that they are engaging? Simply arithmetic, how much do they know about it? So this is important, because elections is also about figures, and they need to be accurate. It is unacceptable, it's in a situation where it's party agents that will have to point out to presiding officers to say, but you didn't add this properly, you didn't reconcile this properly. So this is one thing that we would like the IEC to actually look at. The other thing, when the system was down, we also picked up that their staff, the presiding officers in particular, were not confident to go out there and address the people to tell them what was going wrong. And this actually caused some chaotic situations, because people didn't understand what was going on, because they could see the lines were not going at all. So it's important that they be trained in terms of how they will actually communicate with people when there are problems. We also picked up that some staff members, in fact, this is what we were told by some of the IEC staff members, that they were called the previous night, in other words, on Sunday, and asked to come to work the following day in the morning. Clearly, those people had not had an opportunity to be trained. And obviously, when they were asked questions, they would not be able to answer them properly. The other thing with staff recruitment that we picked up, and this was what voters were telling us, is that in some instances, well-known people linked to political parties were appointed as presiding officers. Those presiding officers may be the most honest people in South Africa, but there's an issue of perception, because people might be concerned to say, but if so-and-so who is known to be linked to political party A is the presiding officer and mine or my independent candidate is losing, it is easy for people to think that perhaps there has been some things that happened there. So perception is very important. We would like to urge the IEC in future to really investigate the kind of people that they are employing as presiding officers, and in general, as IEC officials. During counting, half of some staff members in some voting stations were already sleeping there, especially in big polling stations.
Mr. Ongama, thank you so much. I think you've captured some very, very important points. Obviously saying that this election cannot be ruled out as not having been free and fair, but obviously pointing out some challenges there, from the IEC and some experiences there by the voters. I'd like to thank you so much, sir, for your time here on the SABC News Channel. That is the President of the Voting Rights Organization of South Africa, Mr. Jeffrey Ngonyama. All right, let's continue here now. In fact, later on, in just a few moments, we will be speaking to the Human Sciences Research Council about the survey that they've done about election satisfaction. So we'll be speaking to them momentarily. But let me bring in my guest very, very quickly. And as we were saying, Dr. Baloyi, we were talking about, predictions, looking at various, parties. But let's zoom in now in terms of municipalities. I'd like us to focus on three very quickly, in terms of, because, our journalists, had crisscrossed the country before these elections. We heard from the people right at the bottom. They were dissatisfied with the service delivery. And it's very interesting that, for instance, Mitsi Mahulu in the Free State, and I'd like you to just talk to us about those predictions coming out there. People were very, unhappy with the service delivery from the ruling party, from the ANC, and yet your predictions are showing something else. Again, the ANC seems to be coming out very strongly there.
Yes, for Mitsi Mahulu, actually, maybe before I go to the predictions, if you look at the turnout, the turnout actually reduced from 56% to 47%. But then you look at how the ANC performed. When you look at 2016, they were sitting at 44.8%, but now we project that they will go down to 34.6%. It's almost a 10% loss in vote count. And DA, we project that they will lose slightly from 28.9% to 26.7%. EFF, we see them gaining from 18% to about 24.6%. And then another big gainer there would be FF+.
I'm very, very surprised to see them there.
I think for them, we think they're going to gain from 2.2 to about 5.2%.
Let's swiftly move to another municipality that we focused on, and that's Mfuleni in Gauteng. We focused a lot on some of their issues that were coming out. Obviously, also an ANC, led municipality. Talk to us about those numbers there. Okay,
for Mfuleni, we predict that the ANC will drop from 55.8% in 2016 to 40.3% by the time everything has been counted. And for DA, for them, they actually increased slightly from 24.6% to about 26.8%. And then EFF, we project that they will increase maybe slightly from 12.2% to about 15.7%.
Another municipality is the Midvaal, which is obviously DA-led. I see that the DA you predicting will also have lost a few votes there. Speak to us about that graphic.
Actually, for Midvaal, which has been declared now, we're predicting that actually they are going to gain. So they've gained from about 59.9% in 2016. Now they are sitting at 62.9%.
And how many VDs? So 100% VDs declared?
Declared, yes.
The DA is sitting at 59.9. Apologies, I was looking at the ANC. 62.9
yes.
percent. And so obviously that is
it's a slight gain,
a slight gain for them. Okay, interesting. All right.
But the ANC lost actually quite a bit, from 32% to about 21.1%.
Dr. Baloyi, thank you so much for your time. This afternoon, just making sense of those numbers, and especially in those areas that that have been declared. Another conversation that we were having, Ongama, is just on the hung councils and the hung municipalities. I mean, we were speaking earlier on, and you were quite, shocked by the results that we are seeing coming out of the Western Cape, particularly Knysna.
Yeah, Knysna is quite interesting for me. So if you look at the westerly part of the Eastern Cape, as well as the south coast of the Garden Route, mainly in the Western Cape, what you find is that there was momentum building in recent elections towards the Democratic Alliance, favoring them, winning municipalities a lot more, actually, over the years. It's quite interesting to see that both the Democratic Alliance and the ANC are now in the 30s, if my memory serves me well, in Knysna. I don't know if those statistics can show up, but that's a very interesting thing. And I think that the dynamics there are the Patriotic Alliance, good, as well as a civic movement. Talking about civic movement, a civic movement that has actually gained traction. It's quite interesting that the story is not unidirectional. A growing Democratic Alliance, growing, losing some, winning some.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much to my political analyst, Ongama Mtimka, who's been with me throughout the afternoon. Thank you so much to you. And Dr. Baloyi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Gentlemen, I really do appreciate it. Well, to our SABC 1 viewers, thank you so much for staying with us. This is where I leave you for this afternoon. But continue watching SABC channel 404 as we bring you the numbers in terms of what is currently happening right here at the Rock, of course, that is the IEC's National Results Operations Center.